This is a Viltrox 16mm F1.8 full frame lens. It does have autofocus, and today we are reviewing it for the Sony E mount. All right, so let's go over the headline features, the big things that the brand Viltrox is advertising to you as to why you should buy this lens. So first of all, it's a full frame lens. Second, it's got an aperture range of f1.8 to f22. It's got a fast STM autofocus motor. It also has an aperture ring that can be declicked or clickable. And whenever it is declicked, it's a stepless, smooth rotation. It also has an LCD screen located on the top of the lens. And finally, it's got a USB-C interface for future firmware upgrades and a weather sealing ring. Right now, let's take a moment to take a closer look at the lens. Okay, so this is the Viltrox AF16 f1.8 lens. It's actually rather quite big for a 16mm. There it is, lens hood, and take that off. We've got the LCD screen, of course, is only powered on when it's attached. We've got on the right side here, your click and your declick options. And so here it is declicked, and it's nice and smooth rotation. Here, let me show you. Nice and smooth rotation, declicked. And it does have that hard kind of stop at 22 before you head over to automatic. So there is that stop there at the end, and we can click it back here. And there we go. There's our clicked rotation at each individual marker. Okay, so that is the right side of the lens. Top side of the lens, you have your LCD screen right here. Left side of the lens, AF/MF switch. There's your options. You also have two function buttons. Each is depressible and makes a little clicky noise. Here is the focus ring, very light resistance, I would categorize it as, but a nice and smooth rotation. Here we go, front of the lens, very, very big, very, very wide. We'll shine some light on that through the window. Nice, big, wide front of the lens. And moving onto the back, you can already see that red little weather sealing seal here on the back. It is protected with a USB-C port there for future firmware updates. That is what the Viltrox 16mm f1.8 full frame lens looks like. So that was a close-up look at the lens. It's kind of build quality. It is a very high build quality. I do have to say it feels good. It doesn't feel cheap at all. Now let's talk about the lens's features and more specifically its performance. So when it comes to the aperture ring, it does have a nice, very nice rotation, both when it is in its clickable form. It's got that nice going, that's the best, that's just a great way to describe it. It's got that nice clicky feature. And then whenever you go to the clickless and the smooth rotation, that as well feels nice. And as you already saw, it does have that kind of hard stop at the end. Not completely hard stop, you are able to push it past, but enough to tell you you are at the end of your rotation, you are at f22. Whenever it comes to the focus ring itself, the focus ring, as you already heard, again, it does have a kind of light feel, but it does have a smooth rotation, all right? Light feel, but smooth rotation. Now let's talk about autofocus. Autofocus performed very well, and so for that reason, I actually don't have a whole lot to talk about when it comes to autofocus. I never had any focusing problems. I never had any focus hunting. And actually another great thing that I want to mention is how close you can get to the lens. With some wide angle lenses, it's like, you know, you got to be quite far away and you don't get that up closeness. But here you can get 0.27 meters, that's 0.9 feet distance away from the lens. So you can get close up, you can get really in its face. I mean, I feel almost inside the camera right now. I am super close. And yet, you know, of course, 16mm, it makes me look far away. But you can fill this wide angle lens, you can fill the screen with your subject because you can get close up. So that is quite a nice feature as well. So autofocus, it's got nice quick focus acquisition. Never had any problems with it, and you can get very close up.
Now, as far as focus breathing goes, here is the test. I'll put it up for you. If you are eagle-eyed, you may notice just a slight bit of focus breathing, but there's really nothing to mention here, nothing to sniff at. Especially being a wide-angle lens, you know, it's going to be so much less noticeable, but there's basically nothing here to worry about, or that's going to be interruptive to your audience. As far as chromatic aberration goes, again, it's the exact same story. This is a very clean performance, very impressive results here, and nothing remarkable to comment on. Now, when it comes to lens flares, this is wide-angle lens. So if your subject or if your landscape is towards the sun, you're not going to be able to escape getting lens flares. And as you notice, as we shoot directly towards the sun, that towards the edges, towards the edge of the frame, the flare, does get harsher. Now, if you are able to control the sunlight a little bit using your environment, for example, this shot here, I was able to kind of hide it behind the trees a little bit, you are going to be able to reduce the amount of flaring that happens. In fact, you see as the iris is more open, as we have a wider aperture, the flaring is much softer. But as we close down to f/22, we get the sun star, but on the other hand, we get more intense flaring visible. All right, so because it's a wide angle lens, you're not always going to be able to escape it, especially if you're shooting directly towards the sun, but it doesn't necessarily pose you a bunch of problems. It does come with a lens hood, but there's only so much you can do when you're shooting 16mm focal length. When it comes to low light performance, I can say that this was a very good performing lens. This footage is shot at ISO 6400, and you can see that we get very clean results here. Additionally, autofocus never had any trouble A, locating the subject, but B, holding focus on the subject. And so we get very nice, clean, low light footage. And if we take this even one step further and we take it into an even darker environment, yes, the image does get noisier, but you can see autofocus is still performing well. We're not having some, ridiculous focus hunting, which would be understandable with the amount of light that we are dealing with in this shot. But autofocus really surprised me. It really impressed me here with its overall performance in all various lighting conditions. Autofocus came through every single time. So I really highly commend Viltrox in their autofocus efforts in this 16mm f1.8 lens. All right, let's close this review up. Let's wrap it up and talk about my personal experience using this lens. There's certainly one thing I want to talk about that I haven't even discussed yet, and that is the LCD screen found on the top of the lens. So while this is, I guess in theory, kind of cool, right? You get a bunch of information, you get your iris information, you get your focus information, everything is there ready for you to see. However, in actual practical application, I didn't ever use the LCD screen. So it shows your aperture information there, but your aperture ring is literally right by the screen. So I found myself always looking at the aperture ring for what my aperture was set to rather than the screen, because the screen, the font is actually smaller than what is available to you on the actual physical lens. So as far as that goes, I didn't actually find that handy by any means. Now, I also have to say it shows focus distance. Focus distance is the biggest piece of information that is shown on the screen. It shows you the exact distance of what AF is shooting at. So again, that may be useful for you and your workflow and the way that you would use this lens, but personally for me, I didn't find it useful at all. So I think the LCD screen on the top is cool, but it's not ultimately, at least for me, useful. For you, it might be. And so if it is for you, then just disregard all that. But for me, I never used it. The other thing I do want to talk about, and this is really neither here nor there, but this is not exactly a small lens. The Viltrox 20mm that I reviewed just a couple of weeks ago, that was small, lightweight, compact. Not to say that this is a heavy lug around giant, but it's certainly quite large for what a 16mm lens could be, right? You see, you know, pancake lenses at 12mm. So this could be a bunch more smaller. That's not exactly great English. This could be a lot smaller in its size. It could be a lot more compact if we wanted to use a more advanced English term. However, what we do have to kind of balance that with is the fact that the optical performance in this lens is very impressive. We're getting next to no flaws and a very incredible autofocus performance. So your price point there is $550. That is the review. Incredible autofocus, incredible optical performance. Do you think the price is worth the product, and do you need this lens? All those decisions are up to you, and I'm gonna leave that with you, all right? The buying links are down below if you are interested. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day, take care, and to remember to let the light in.